Senator Barack Obama made a revolutionary speech about race in America.
You can't say it, but you know it's true.
We asked Jenna McQuillan, a speechwriter, in order to learn more about Obama's rhetoric and the tactics that he uses during his speech.
Hi, I'm Jenna McQuillan, and as a speechwriter, I'm going to be pointing out the tactics Obama used in his Perfect Union speech. During the presidential primaries, the reverend from Obama's church sparked controversy about racism in government. The purpose of the speech was to minimize concerns regarding these comments.
We the people, in order to form a more perfect union.
Obama opened by referring to the Constitution in Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. His use of illusion and nationalism worked to connect himself to the audience under the common precept that we're all Americans connected by our history. This emphasis on American and national identity was reiterated when he mentioned the American dream. This symbol portrayed Obama's support towards middle-class Americans.
These people are part of me, and they are part of America, this country that I love.
Throughout the speech, Obama used anecdotes instead of factual information to create trust and sympathy. He used an honest tone when talking about personal past experiences with the Reverend and his faith. This tone was used to de-escalate the issues caused by the Reverend's comments on government. Obama enumerated his goals in a straightforward and direct manner by using pauses for effect and emphasizing certain words.
We see standing on street corners or languishing in our prisons without hope or prospects for the future.
In addition, his use of parallel structure created balance and rhythm during his piece. These simple strategies portrayed him as a composed and prepared candidate.
To learn more about the historical connections in Obama's speech, we asked Maddie Park to weigh in.
In his A More Perfect Union speech, Obama spoke about the necessity of mending racial divisions in the United States between white and black Americans. The issue of racial division in America goes all the way back to the introduction of African slaves in Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. Slavery continued in the U.S. throughout the 17th and 18th centuries because of a growing cash crop-based economy. In the 18th century alone, 6 to 7 million black slaves were imported to the New World. In 1787, the U.S. Constitution acknowledged the institution of slavery, where it said each slave is 3/5 of a person for taxation and representation purposes. In 1808, Congress banned the importation of slaves from Africa, but slavery itself was still legal. The issue of slavery contributed to the start of the Civil War, which lasted from 1861 to 1865. Northern states were anti-slavery, while southern states depended on slavery to prosper economically. In 1863, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which set free all the slaves in the Confederate or Southern rebel states. In 1856, the Confederate States surrendered, and the nation entered the era of Reconstruction, which was a time of rebuilding for the U.S. This lasted until 1877. During these years, amendments called the Reconstruction Amendments were passed, giving former slaves the following rights. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery, the 14th gave equal protection and rights of citizenship, and 15th Amendment gave African Americans the right to vote. When Reconstruction ended in 1877, white supremacist groups like the Ku Klux Klan gained momentum and Jim Crow laws were passed in state and local law. And then in 1896 court case, Plessy v. Ferguson, the Supreme Court declared separate but equal as constitutional. This doctrine was used for many decades to follow in order to defend segregation. In 1948, Truman's Executive Order 9981 was paramount because it ended segregation of armed forces. Soon after, the Civil Rights Movement started around 1954 and ended in 1968. In 1954, in the court case Brown v. Board of Education, the Supreme Court overturned Plessy v. Ferguson's separate but equal ruling. The court ruled that segregation in schools is unconstitutional. Other events that took place during the Civil Rights Movement include Eisenhower and Little Rock 9, sit-ins, and March on Washington, MLK's I Have a Dream speech, Johnson's Civil Rights Act of 1964, the 24th Amendment, which prohibited poll taxes, John's Voting Rights Act of 1965. In 1988, Congress enacted the Civil Rights Restoration Act, which further forced compliance with civil rights laws. A few years later, Bush signed the Civil Rights Act of 1991, which strengthened existing civil rights laws and provided damages in cases of intentional employment discrimination. And finally, in 1992, for the first time in decades, race riots broke out in the city of Los Angeles. Some other key speeches throughout U.S. history that connect to the race issue in America are Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, Harding's Civil Rights Speech, JFK's inaugural address, JFK's Civil Rights Address, Johnson's We Shall Overcome speech, and Hillary Clinton's speech on unity in divided U.S. Despite the many years of racial tension and attention brought to these issues by influential figures, these problems still remain today.
I think America and a national identity is the most prominent theme throughout Obama's speech. He uses it to unite all of his supporters under a common theme of nationalism and despite racism.
I think that he really emphasizes the individual's power to make decisions and make change to help ameliorate the racial tensions in the United States.
I think that the negative sentiment around the government during the Bush administration really shows an emphasis and a need for more unity in the American community.
Actually, I think that Obama's focus on his speech more alludes to politics and power because he calls for a greater change in the way our government intervenes in minority and racial problems.
But do you not think that there needs to be a change?
I think that Obama's administration, their focus is a little stretched. I think that there are much bigger fish to fry, such as the war on terror.
But I think that the war on terror imposed by Bush, and he didn't impose a lot of stricter policies and measures that were needed at the time to really help the American economy and the American sentiment.
Obama focuses on more social reform than political reform, so I think that his theme is more connected to culture and society than politics and power.
I agree because I think that he really pushes to help the racial tensions and help unite ethnic groups and the races in the United States.
I agree with the comments made by Obama's editor that the speech accurately portrays Obama's potential as a presidential candidate, and it shows his capability as a speaker.
I agree. I think that the speech really shows that he's a great and convincing orator. I agree with Bill Richardson, the governor of New Mexico. I agree that he talked about a sensitive topic with eloquence, and it was inspiring and uplifting to the audience.
I think that Obama's speech was really important for the racial tensions that America is facing at the time. I think that he handled the situation really well. However, like the political strategist Ralph Reed, I believe that there was a really big missed opportunity that he had. He could have used that platform in order to speak about his potential leadership in the future. However, he kind of de-escalated the issue, but however didn't address the importance and the significance of Reverend Wright's statement and his feelings at the time.
I do agree with the fact that Obama's speech was powerful and definitely a courageous move, but like I said before, I think that there are bigger fish to fry, and I think that if Obama focuses his energy on the war on terror, immigrants climbing out of this recession, I think we can find a lot more success